November 7, 1861, 17 racehorses competed in the first Melbourne Cup. Since then, it's been one of Australia's most prestigious events, attracting over 200,000 people. The actual Melbourne Cup Day is usually the first Tuesday in November, but the Melbourne Cup Carnival actually ties 4 important days together. The Saturday before the Melbourne Cup race, which is called the Victoria Derby Day. Then the Tuesday following is the actual Melbourne Cup race day. Thursday is the Crown's Day or Ladies' Day. And finally, it concludes on the Saturday again with the Emirates Stakes Day or Family Day. It's important to know the difference between these days and the etiquette of each of these days. In part 3 of this series, I will talk more about the details of each of these days, the culture, the etiquette of each day, the dress code, and of course, what races are run on each specific day. As you can imagine, there are 3 things that tie all 4 of these days together, and that is drinking, fashion, and horses, and possibly in that order too. It's basically a week-long party with most of the day activities as well as the actual races happening at the Flemington Racecourse, which is about 20 minutes from Melbourne CBD. On race days, traffic becomes rather congested. Therefore, if you did plan to go to the races, I would suggest that you take the special race day trains. Departing from Flinders Station, it only takes about 25 minutes to get to the gates of the racetracks themselves. Arriving at the racetracks, you can buy entry tickets right there for the event, or you can go online and pre-purchase your tickets online. The Flemington Racecourse actually has a very nice informative webpage with all the dates and prices, and lots of good information and tips about the Melbourne Cup Carnival. Another helpful tip is to download the official Flemington Racecourse app, which has a ton of information and very handy map of the event location, pointing out all the facilities as well as the bars and restaurants and so on. You won't be allowed to bring any alcohol into the event, but there is an abundance of bars and restaurants and also food vendors all over the place. If you're not in a corporate booth, bring a little blanket and camp out on the lush lawns with a bottle of bubbly. When I went there, it was seriously sunny during the day and pretty cold at night, so make sure that you have ample sunscreen for the day and then bring something warm when the sun sets. And speaking of lawns and gardens, flowers are an unmistakable feature of the event, especially roses. The Flemington Racecourse itself has over 12,000 roses and over 200 species of fragrant flowers. And each of the 4 carnival days has an official flower associated with it. On Derby Day, it's the cornflower, which is kind of a bluish purple flower. On the Melbourne Cup race day, it is the yellow rose. On Oaks Day, it's the pink rose, and on Stakes Day, it's the classic red rose. Lots of ladies incorporate these flowers into their outfits and hats, and the gentlemen usually pin it onto their jackets. You can buy the flower of the day all over the city, as well as the racecourse itself. But if you knew in advance which day you were going to attend, you could also try and incorporate the flower of the day into your hat or your outfit for that day. I did do a quick look online to try and see how many flowers are sold on the actual Melbourne Cup race day, but I failed to get a reliable number. I would imagine that it's in the tens of thousands. A very good day to be a florist, I'm sure. Fashion is possibly more exciting at times than the races themselves. I don't think it's compulsory to wear a hat if you're a lady, but to be honest, I really didn't see anyone without something on their head, whether it be a hat or a headpiece or sometimes a garden. On Derby Day, most people traditionally dress in black and white. Melbourne Cup Day, some color comes out, but everyone's still in either cocktail dresses or suits. And on Oaks Day or Ladies' Day, fashion kicks into high gear and the ladies come out in their most fashion-forward dresses and outfits. And everyone is in heels, despite making it very hard to walk on the grassy lawns. Most ladies end up carrying their heels at the end of the day. Finally, on Stakes Day, which is the Saturday, also dubbed Family Day, and yes, that includes kids' fashion. Families come dressed to the T and compete for family fashion prizes. Lots of fun activities for kids of all ages on that day. And even though there's plenty to see and do on all the carnival days, I would imagine if you had kids, bringing them on this day would be the most fun for them. Betting is another large component of the races. Gambling is of course legal in Australia, so the Melbourne Cup race day itself is in fact Australia and New Zealand's single biggest betting event. A poll taken suggests that 80% of Australian adults bet on this day. And don't forget the 100,000 tourists that descend on the city during Melbourne Cup Carnival. Tourists alone accumulate over $200 million in bet during the Melbourne Cup Carnival. Big money up for grabs. If you know what you're doing, of course, which was not me. My first time at a horse race, my first time betting, and it wasn't quite as fruitful as I thought it would be. I am unfortunately going to have to cancel my early retirement plans. If you don't know what to do the way that I didn't know what to do, you are probably best off doing a bit of research prior to the event. But to be honest, even though I did quite a lot of research beforehand, I still pretty much had no idea. In fact, I also lacked in understanding the fashion and social etiquette of this event, which is pretty important. But you really can only understand the scope of it once you've actually been to the event and the races themselves. So luckily for you, I've compiled a series of 6 videos titled Beginner's Guide to the Melbourne Cup. Have a look at those videos to give you a more basic understanding of all the ins and outs during the Melbourne Cup Carnival. And you know what, I reckon even if you're a pro at this event, you might as well have a look as well, because I think you'll pick up a few tidbits here and there about the history and some other things that you might not have known either. And finally, when it's all said and done, we end the day as we started, with horses and fashion. Well, sort of. After the races, people actually bid on the horseshoes that were worn by the winning horses. And women trot about barefoot in the grass, relieving their feet from, of course, wearing the heels all day. This happens just long enough to catch a second wind before the evening festivities kick into high gear at all the bars and restaurants around the city. Now, I have been to the Oktoberfest, I've been to the Calgary Stampede, I've been to Thai New Year, and I've been to Vegas. So I think I qualify in saying that I think the Melbourne Cup Carnival is most definitely a party that you do not want to miss out on, and very much something that you might want to add to your bucket list.